So this domain speaks about how you do the software design, how you validate the design, how you do the assessment for that, what kind of a test, audit strategies you can form for this particular software design. What kind of a security control testing can be conducted on the applications? What kind of a security process data can be collected? And what are the various security audits which gives the assurance that the application is working as per the security norms required by the organization, because your security requirement is going to be different for different organization based on nature of business of that organization. So what you do in security test, what's the importance of the security test? It is for verification that whatever are the controls which are required in an application, they are available, they are already implemented, okay, and they are working, they're functioning the way they are required to be. So it's not that okay, you implement the password control, so your application is password protected. Okay, it's very good, but then there is a test also required to see that whether that control is working the way it should be. So if your password protection is actually working, is your password safe, if is your password meeting all the security norms? So all these tests you have to do. Maybe penetration test is one of the best way to do that. What is penetration test? It's a digital attempt for a robbery. You try to penetrate, you try to barge into the security controls implemented by an organization. Okay, so it is an attempt to break the security. So for doing that, what is the assessment? So assessment is an analysis, it's a form of testing, it's a review of the security systems, the applications which are tested in the environment. For that you do the risk assessment, you find the vulnerabilities. What are the vulnerabilities? It's weakness in your system. Okay, so you have say the main door to your house, but that main door do not have a proper locking system. It's a weakness. You have a proper sliding windows to your house, but you do not have the grills. Weakness. Somebody can barge into your house. Similarly, you have applications, but it do not have required controls. Maybe do not have the input validation, malware protection. You have your laptop, but you do not have antivirus software. It's a weakness. Okay, so you do the assessment to find out those weaknesses. Why you do this? Because once you know what are the weaknesses, you can remediate those weaknesses, you can take action to bridge the gap wherever there is a weakness. So what is the importance of risk, the security assessment? It helps you to reduce the risk. It is extremely important concept which you need to understand. Okay, so what does it mean? It helps you to make sure that the risk percentage, okay, is reduced. Your software is having lesser risk. You cannot eliminate the risk at any given point of time. What you can do, you can reduce the impact of risk. So if you install antivirus software on your laptop, can anyone guarantee that now the virus attacks will not happen? The virus attacks will still happen, but the intensity of the virus attack, the possibility of virus impacting your system will be reduced. So that is where you implement the antivirus software. Okay, then you do the compliance verification. So you make sure that there is adherence to wherever whatever regulatory requirements are there. You improve the performance, you give the assurance to the required stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Senior management, head of the departments, business owners. So you give them the confidence that this software has a proper security posture. It does not have any weaknesses where your business will have a impact. So that is what you achieve by giving these assurances. That's the important concept. Then you also have the resource optimization. So by doing this, you achieve that your organization is having resources used in a right way. Your organization is making maximum use of resources with minimum wastage. So that gives another kind of assurance for your organization. What kind of assessment and the assurance you can get? You can do those things by performing the security audits. These are similar to the assessments, but these are performed by the independent auditors. They are the subject matter experts. So you do internal audits. So you have an internal audit team, you have an internal audit department. It is completely isolated from your regular IT team or the IT representatives, and they report directly to the board. So they are the independent department doing the analysis. Then you have the external audits. So you call for the external auditors, especially from the big four like Deloitte, like PwC, Ernst and Young, or these kind of the people you call for your audit. And then they give the assurance report, they give the finding report, which is for internal stakeholders as well as the external customers or the regulators, the various legal authorities. For them this report is generated. Then you also have certain audits which are conducted on behalf of organization, which we called as the third party audits. So these are normally conducted for the uh, assurance to be given to the regulatory body. So regulatory body can order the audit. They can initiate this audit under the contract, under the law, to get that uh, assurance that this organization is functioning the way it should be. Okay. They also have the provisions which is under the statement on standards for attestation engagements law, which is documented under SASE 16, which is now upgraded to SASE 18. Okay, so it gives the reporting on controls. It provides the common standard to be used by the auditors. Okay, for the service organization, and these reports are called as the SOC reports. Okay, so you have a couple of types of report. You have SOC 1 report. So SOC 1 is also having the type 1 and type 2. So what happens in this? So type 1 report is just in time, means when I'm doing your audit, what's your position on that particular day? That is called type 1 report. It also speaks about the design and control, if they are in place or not. Okay, so and it focuses on financial reporting. That is your SOC 1. Then you have SOC 2, which is basically for the organizations related to the technology. So it focuses on the technology. It is based on the five trust principles, that is the security, confidentiality, integrity, availability, and privacy. It also is giving you type 1, type 2. So type 1 is just in time, as on date report, mentioning whether the specific design of controls is in place or not, whether these controls are implemented or not. Okay, and there is a type 2 report which is for a longer tenure, maybe 6 months, maybe year, where the focus is whether these implemented controls are operating effectively or not. So it focuses on the effectiveness of those controls. It is a exhaustive report. SOC 2 report is a extremely exhaustive report, type 2. and it gives a certain assurance to the required customers for that, but it is not for a general publication. So if someone is looking for the assurance, then a report which is designed for that is a SOC 3 report, which is for the general users. Okay, because it is same as SOC 2, but it is not having any confidential data. So these are the third party audits. So you can then have that, how what kind of a report you can use at what stage. Okay, which report? If it is financial, you use SOC 1. If it is technology, you use SOC 2 or a SOC 3, depending upon who wants the report. Internal use SOC 2, external use SOC 3, detailed report type 2, just in time report type 1. So that is how you get these reports issued. Then you do the vulnerability scans to find out weaknesses in your system. So what do? You probe your system. You run the discovery scans on your network to find out whether there are any weaknesses. So you do the network discovery, you do the scanning for those vulnerabilities, and you also do the web scanning. So you find out if there are any issues and you fix it. So you do the network discovery. What do you do? So you find out whether there are any ports, any services which are not required to be active on your device. Are they still active? Are they working? What's the purpose? What are they used for? So that is the way to find out. If you find it out, what do you do? If there is a weakness, you initiate a action on that to make sure that those vulnerabilities are no more active. So you use the tools like Nessus for doing the discovery scan, or a Nmap for a discovery scan. So say if you have a port 21 open where you do not use the file transfer protocol, it's a risk. Okay, if you have the sync handshake, a three-way handshake happening, okay, and it is not getting completed, your TCP handshake, then with the scanning you will know that it's not completed, it's half open, and you will figure out what is a weakness. You will do the Christmas scanning, so you will send the packets with the fin, push or urge flags, and you will see that how your system reacts for that. If your system is giving a multiple signals, it lit up like a Christmas tree. It is called as Christmas scanning. It's a spatial type of a scanning which happens. So these are various type of a discovery thing you do using the tools like Nmap. This is kind of a free tool. It gives you the status of the ports, whether it is open, closed, or filtered. Then on the scanning, you sometimes get false positive, you can get the false negatives. So it gives you whether the weakness is a real weakness or not, and based on that you can identify the actions to be taken. Then you do the web scanning, where you are hosting your web applications. So these applications, they pose a significant risk to your enterprise because they are facing the public access. So it is on the public facing internet. So by their nature, you are running these applications, you expose the services on to the internet users. So if there is any external malware, external threat coming inside, it can have an impact on your organization. So that's where you do the web scanning, which for the applications which are running on these servers, and you try to find if there are any weaknesses which require to be fixed so that your application is running in a safe way. That helps you to uh, protect your organization. It is also called as hardening of the application, removing unwanted ports, disabling unwanted services. It protects your organization. So that is web scanning. Then you have the penetration testing. Here, the difference is you when you find the vulnerabilities, you just check for the vulnerabilities. What is a weakness? But in penetration testing, you actually exploit that weakness. So if the password is weak, you find out the weakness, but you break the password and you enter into someone else's account is a penetration. So actual use of that weakness, actually exploiting that weakness is called penetration. So whatever you have found as a weakness, you try to break. Why you do that? You want to find out that to what extent it can cause a damage to your organization. So there are quite important phases in this testing. So you first have to do the planning. You have to plan for the scope. You have to obtain the approval from the senior management. If there is no senior management approval, your penetration test is not going to be treated legitimate. It is also called as your jail-free card. Okay, because if the attack is done, if this kind of a testing is done without approval from the senior management, that means it's a illegal attempt on your environment, and this illegal attempt is then not allowed. Okay, so that is where it has to be treated in the right way, that the approval has to be taken. Why you do these kind of a thing? You have to gather the information. So for penetration test, you gather the information, you decide the scope, you do the vulnerability scan, and then do the exploitation. Normally the vulnerability scan, the penetration testing is done in a way. You have white box testing where the full knowledge of the target is given to the penetration tester. It is also called as the crystal box testing. You have a gray box testing where the partial knowledge is given, and then you have a black box testing. It is most recommended. It is done with a attacker's perspective. It gives you the maximum information on the weaknesses, that what kind of exploitation can be done. Okay, so once that is done, you do the reporting to the management. Okay, it is done from the attacker's perspective. So it gives a lot of real information. That is penetration testing. So you can do the penetration testing using various teams, which is the naming conventions today they are followed. You have red team, so it simulates the real world attacks to evaluate what are the security defenses implemented, what are the weaknesses. You have blue team. So blue team is basically, it focuses on the defenses. So it is more about the attacks which are coming, how you are going to defend. So that is called blue team. And the purple team, which collaborates between the red and blue. So it is more about planning the security. So the naming convention is based on the role of these teams. Then you do the vulnerability scanning, you scan the system, you try to breach, and you also test on social engineering, because social engineering is the new threat which has emerged, where uh, it is a non-technical uh, threat, where you are actually using the human emotions, human factors, or human behavioral patterns to gain the information. So you ask, what is your password? You call, I'm calling from CEO's office. Please give me password of the CEO. CEO has asked me to take it. It's a social engineering. So if the information is given without verification, then what happens? Your data is compromised. So there is the web series called Jamtara. If you have a look at it, it gives a clear understanding how the social engineering works. So that is on various penetration testing methods. Then you also have, when we are discussing software, you have your code review, extremely important and testable topic, because piece of code is the foundation of your software development. Okay, so if that is not tested, then your software is basically not safe. So you have a lot of ways to do the testing, but one of the important thing from exam perspective is fagan inspection. It is for the softwares which are developed for a highly restrictive environment, say military organization, health organization, banking organization, where the code review is done in a very rigorous manner. Very serious uh, review is done, because there the failure, a code flaw, can result into a very catastrophic effect. So it's a very intensive review of the code. So you do planning of the review, you have an overview, you do the preparation, actual code review. If there are any gaps, you do the rework and do the follow. Okay, so any high risk product, any high risk software which is developed is tested with this kind of a inspection. It is called fagan inspection. Then you have your static testing. So when the source code is not running, you do the static testing. It is also called as SAST, Software Application Security Testing, or a static application security testing. It is done when the code is not getting executed. It is a line by line review of the code. Then you have dynamic testing, which is also called as DAST, Dynamic Application Security Testing. So testing is done when the software is running, when the code is getting executed. So it is the combination of functional as well as the performance testing. So you are, if you have any weaknesses on the code, where you can have the SQL injection. Okay, you can have a cross-site request forgery. These kind of weaknesses can be easily found in this DAST, dynamic testing. So then you have another type which is called fuzz testing. So these are different type of a testing, where in first testing, if you are having a test happening on a the recurring basis, each time you use a different type of inputs. Okay, and test that how the application behaves. So for example, you will enter the date of birth, maybe where the person is more than 100 years old, or you will enter the date of birth which is in future, and you will see how the application behaves. So if you are using the previous input values by doing small changes and use it in applications, then it is called the mutational fuzzing. Okay, so you already have the test values, you tweak it, you do some small change, it is mutational fuzzing. And if you are having the algorithm written for these kind of the test case generation, then it is called generational fuzzing. You also have the synthetic transactions, where your test results are compared against the expected result. So, what was the output expected and what was the output actually received? So, it's a test case result which is verified to give the assurance that your test cases are as per the expectation. The application should behave the way it is required. So your code review can be done as the static analysis, line by line. So normally the peer review is done. One developer checks the code written by the other developer. That is called as peer review. You do the unit testing, where you do the module by module review. You do the integration testing, where two different functionalities, when they start working together, you do the testing of those functionalities. So you have a payable module and receivable module. When they work together, when they pass the entries in your general ledger in ERP, then you do the integration, because you write this code separately. You create the matrices of the code to see how the functionality is happening. You analyze the quality of that code. Okay, you focus on the security and you do the continuous integration testing. That is how it works. Then you have interface testing. Today interfaces are integral part of your software because the applications speak to each other. Different applications, your HRMS will talk to ERP, your ERP will talk to CRM, your ERP will talk to maybe warehouse management system, depending upon what is the nature of your organization's business. So interface is non-negotiable. What is that? It is called API, Application Programming Interfaces. It acts like a mediator between two different software. Say, imagine you are going in restaurant. When you walk into the restaurant, you don't go to the kitchen and place the order. Okay, you go, you sit on the table. There is a waiter or a steward which comes to your table. He takes the order. He checks with you what is that you want to eat, and he goes and places that order in the kitchen. Chef prepares the food as per the order, gives it to the waiter, and waiter delivers it on your table. Okay, so in here the waiter is an interface between your requirement and the chef. Similarly, APIs are the interface which basically speak or basically help to connect to different softwares. So in this, the person who is writing these API has to make sure that they are doing a proper testing, they are implementing the required security on these interfaces. Okay, so it is extremely important and testable in exam. Okay, that's where proper testing of these interfaces has to be done. You have to have a user interfaces, physical interfaces, all this has to be checked properly. Your logical controllers, your machinery interfaces are the physical interfaces. So these all these interfaces has to be tested. Then when you do the normal testing, you also need to do the abuse case or a misuse case testing. What does it mean? You have to make sure that your application is ready to handle the abuse or the mistakes of the user. So if you enter the human weight as 800, how the system is going to react? Is there a person with 800 kg weight? No. Then what should your system do? If you are trying to enter the credit card number with 20 digits, if you are trying to enter the date of birth of 2029, if you are trying to enter the Aadhaar card number in the alphabets, all these has to be handled. So when you are testing your application, you enter the wrong data. You do this testing with an intention to crash the software. So that is why it is called as misuse case or a abuse case testing. The intention of this testing is to check how the application is able to handle the abuse done by the user. So when you are doing various types of testing, you need to have a test coverage analysis. So you have scenarios to test. So you will write, say, 1000 test cases, out of which in actual testing how many scenarios you were able to test. Okay, that gives, so out of 1000 you were able to check say 900 scenarios. That means 90% is the coverage. Okay, so you can have a assurance that okay, I have tested these many scenarios, almost important things are tested. So you have, in that you have the branch coverage, so you have every statement written in the code you have executed, so there is nothing which is not tested from the execution perspective. Then conditional coverage, so each if else, these kind of conditions, if this happens behave like this or like this. So if else, each of these conditions you have tested. All the functions like generate a purchase order, print a check, receive the money, pay the money, all those functions are tested. Your loops, if there are any recurring printing where the code has to execute in a loop basis, is this loop tested? That okay, if you have given order to print 500 pages, then till it reaches 500, it has to keep printing. That is a loop. So even you have to test that. If you have written 10,000 lines of the code, the statement coverage tells you whether each and every line is actually executed. Okay, or you have out of 10,000, there are 15 lines which are not required. You have just wasted your efforts in writing this. That statement coverage gives you that analysis. Then you have the monitoring of the website. So when the functionality is required, you can do the active monitoring, you can do the passive monitoring, which gives you the assurance that whether your website is working in a right way or not. So where in a passive monitoring, it actually analyzes the network traffic which passes through the website. It captures the required data and generates the alerts wherever required. It is also called as real user monitoring. Okay, and then you have the synthetic monitoring where you create an artificial transaction, a fake transaction, to just do the testing whether the website is working the way it should be. So it's like a test entry. Okay, so it is not a real transaction. It is done with an intention that each function is working properly. So that is one way of monitoring the websites. Then you have the implementation of the security management process. So you have your own log reviews, generate the logs, accumulate it at a central place. Today we have the SIEM solution, security incidents and event management system, where you gather all the logs. You find out the issues from the logs, you do the analysis of the logs, you generate the alerts wherever required. Okay, you have the account management review done. So all the normal user accounts and especially the privileged user accounts are reviewed on a regular basis. And if there is any requirement to change any access, you do that. You have a backup verification review. Your backups are verified, backup restoration is tested, all that happens. So that is your security management process. And for that, you have your key performance indicators defined to check how your application is behaving. Okay, it is very important. Now this picture indicates that your KPI should be realistic. Otherwise what will happen, you will show that your KPIs are very good, but you have a real issue behind the scene, you are not exposing that. So maybe you have found the vulnerabilities. Say in Jan you have a trend, you have found 43 vulnerabilities. Okay, now in February it has gone down to say 31. In March, it has gone down to 26. So you are trying to show that the trend is going down, and you are saying, oh, my KPI performance is very good. But whatever are those 20 plus vulnerabilities, they are still pending from January. There are some serious issues which are not addressed. So you are trying to show that my vulnerability ratio is dropping. Yes, it is dropping, but you are addressing only recent events. Your old vulnerabilities, which has got some serious issues, you have not addressed. So your performance indicators need to be designed in a way where they present the real picture. They give the real indication. They expose the real weaknesses. Okay, and that is the key importance, and that's where your key performance and risk indicators, they have to they give you the incident rates, they have to give the real picture on the response time so that you can take necessary actions. So these are important topics which are covered in the domain 6. I have covered it on a high level to give you an indication.